Welcome to Web Design. I'm your professor, Janae Corrado. We are going to be focusing this semester on producing functional but also well-designed and nice to look at websites using the software Adobe Dreamweaver from the Creative Cloud 2017 update. So you will need access to the software, be it at a lab on campus or purchasing a student grade version of the software through Adobe's webpage. A couple things that I'd like to note. I've been asked to teach this course from a visual design standpoint. So while I understand that there are a lot of students that are coming in through internet technology, computer science majors that may already have a good deal of experience under your belt working with building web designs, there are also going to be many students that are coming in that perhaps have never had any experience building websites previously. So I am going to teach the course assuming you have no experience, but we will cover a lot of ground. All that I ask, regardless of what your particular skill set happens to be, is that you please make sure that you just bring your A game when time comes down to submit assignments. Chances are when you first open up Dreamweaver, there will be a different introductory page that you see, perhaps asking what your skill level happens to be with web design, whether you've used Dreamweaver before, that sort of thing. You will follow the prompts there. But I am going to produce a new document to cover the interface of Dreamweaver with you. You can click New and it will give you a list of options. This looks a lot like the previous versions of Dreamweaver, but you can also click HTML, CSS in this screen as well. You will notice that there are some starter templates that are available to you. While you are absolutely allowed to kind of noodle around with these because they do have set presets laid out for you, none of these are to be used within any assignment. You're going to be making everything from scratch. So I understand it's enticing to maybe go ahead and just plug your own information into these when the assignments come due. This is not going to help you learn what you need to learn, just drag and drop. I'd like everybody to produce their content from scratch if they have the ability to do so, and you will. It may not be pretty at first if you're new, but you will grow and develop your skills. So I'm going to go to Quick Start and I'm going to click on HTML document. So right now I have my layout set up pretty much the way you will be seeing it when you first open Dreamweaver. So the Dreamweaver workspace is set up. You have a few different ways to lay out your workspace. If you are a coder and you like to hand type your web page by hand, you will probably prefer code view, which is going to just give you the lines of code. If you are a new designer, I'm going to recommend using split view, because if I were to place any content inside of my web page, any changes I make in design mode are going to also occur in code. So this will give you the opportunity to learn how to read HTML or how to learn CSS coding languages, but still be able to review a visual at the same time, which is extremely useful. There is an option called Live View, which is often on by default. This essentially is going to give you a preview of how it could look in a browser without actually needing to switch to a browser to review your work. So please consider selecting what is going to work best for you. Also, in relation to the workspace. Standard is what is opening by default. Developer, again, it's going to streamline everything for code-related functions even more. This is a personal preference. I am never going to be working strictly in this. I am pretty much always going to be in the standard layout with split showing the visual design and what the code is doing, but that is my personal preference. So you do what works for you. In all of the videos that I'm going to be producing, this is what I'm going to work from. Some additional presets that I think will help new students work a little bit easier. Under Window, there's a panel called Properties. And when you first open this, it's probably going to be floating in the front or on top of your document like this. You can drag this panel all the way to the bottom, and you can see how my screen highlights, and dock it down here at the bottom. While this isn't necessary, there are multiple ways to get to this information. This can be a quick and easy way to help you alter styles or alter your HTML as you work. For instance, if I want my text here to be formatted larger like a heading, there's a drop down right there that will immediately alter the appearance. So the Properties panel can be a useful visual aid. I'll leave mine up just to help new students learn, but it isn't a requirement to have up. Also, if you happen to work on a large screen, as you can see, I work on a wider than average screen. Not only do you have the ability to show the code and the design visual horizontally where they're stacked on top of one another, I would actually prefer to have mine side by side in columns. That can be altered as well by going to View, Split vertically. You can also alter which side the code or the visual display is on. Now, I like this because I have a wide screen. If you're working on a smaller screen, such as a laptop, by all means, leave it at the default. If you decide you would like to alter that, just go to View, Split, and it will tell you how you have the ability to split the screen should you choose to do that. Something worth noting, you do have the ability to set up your workspace to work how you would prefer. So if you want certain panels to be visible, other panels to not be visible, you can produce a new workspace and rearrange all of the parts, save however you've got it set up, or reset the standard, which will default all of my settings here. A few areas that you'll want to focus on in relation to how the software appears in terms of its interface. Documents do appear in tabs. You can have multiple documents open at any given time. So if I were to produce a new document, I'll say I'll make another HTML document and I hit create, you can see that it will lay them out next to one another. You can rearrange them by clicking and dragging, or close out of it by clicking the little X. Oftentimes, multiple documents, HTML documents, will be open at one time, in addition to cascading style sheets, any JavaScript files that you may want to work with, etc. So that is going to be where they're located. Down here at the bottom, this bar here, while there's not much present, is referred to the tag selector. So you can see if I click in the text, which has an H1 tag, it shows the H1, which is within the body tag. So oftentimes, if you're working deep within a document, coming down to the tag selector, this can help you narrow down specific areas of code that you want to work on. If we come to the panels over here to the right-hand side, The insert panel is very handy because this allows for you to produce different items within your HTML document, whether you're making a new div container to enclose content, whether you'd like to insert an image or a table or a bulleted or numbered list, a hyperlink, etc. This makes it very quick and easy for you to do just that. One nice thing, this is a really lengthy list, and it does narrow it down into specifics. So we've got HTML as the current, but it can narrow down to specific form elements, template items, bootstrap components, jQuery. You can even make a favorites list. HTML and form I will probably use the most during this course, but if you decide maybe this section of the screen is not the best location for it, you can actually grab it and dock it to the top. The only issue with that is that you will need to be familiar with what each of these icons means. Fortunately, you can see a nice little key that when I hover over it, it tells me what I'm dealing with, and it again shows me the tabs as opposed to the drop-down menu. So it's still very easy to use. With any of these, not all of these panels can be docked to the top or bottom. Some of them can, some of them won't go in certain areas, but you have the ability to open it. You can minimize it by clicking the little double triangle or double chevron. You can also close out of it by clicking the X. If you accidentally close out of something, or there's something that should be located here that is not, simply go back up to Window, and you can click on whichever panel is missing. And there's several panels there that aren't even visible. And you can redock it wherever you'd like it to be. These tabs can also be minimized by double-clicking and maximized by double-clicking a second time. So if you prefer to have these insert items stay over here, totally fine. If you like it up top, also totally fine. That's a personal preference. Just letting you know it may appear in several different locations depending on what you set up or what the defaults do for you. As I mentioned previously, the Properties panel can be very helpful when you put anything into an open HTML document, whether it's an image, text, or anything that's located in the Insert panel. You can use the Properties panel to fine-tune that element's appearance and attributes. So whether that's doing a quick format of the way that text appears, like maybe I decide instead of an H1 I'd like an H2 to be applied, or I'd like it to be a paragraph, which is significantly smaller. I can apply CSS IDs and classes to it. I can even turn it into a link. So you have the ability to make a lot of changes here. Same thing with CSS. You can make some alterations to content as well using the Properties panel. In certain instances, such as previous versions of Dreamweaver, if you've used it before, it was often referred to as the Property Inspector. So keep in mind that depending on what you have selected within a document, this content may change. It's not going to look the same if you select an image and then work from there versus other items. So certain sections does appear a little bit different depending on what you currently have selected or what you're working on within the document. Additional things in the workspace that you may want to be aware of, your Files panel. This allows for you to set up and organize an entire website for any project or even a series of websites by nesting them within one another, including folders and files. I will show you how to set this up momentarily. In addition to the Insert panel, the CSS Designer panel is also going to be something that you'll use. Depending on how narrow or how wide the document is open, you may see more or less content. Wider gives you sort of a split screen that can allow you to see sources and media as well as properties of certain style sheets, as well as selectors as well down here. So I do recommend opening it up a little bit wider if you're going to use it. Again, just like all of these other panels, you do have the ability to separate it and have it float on its own. So if there's maybe an area of your screen that doesn't have much content in it, you can actually cover up other information by having that float on top. I do like to keep mine in the same spot. Oop. Block that with those. I'm going to try and nest it. There we are. I do like to keep it in the same location, so I do recommend keeping that up there. But if you need to move it, again, you have the ability to do so. Put it wherever you're comfortable. There are other panels. The CC Libraries allows for your Creative Cloud account to sync with Dreamweaver. So if you have any graphics or any colors that you want to work from that perhaps you've saved to the Creative Cloud, you can have those pop up here as well. Snippets, assets, and DOM I will discuss at a later time, but those are what are available currently. And again, if there's anything that you want to see, just pop open the Windows panel up from the menu bar and you can find that information. Also, if you want to simplify any of these menus, clicking the double triangle or the double chevron will compress them to simple labels and an icon that represents each section. Clicking on that will open just that panel, but it will not show you all of that information at once. So again, this is a personal choice. This will probably be used if you're using a smaller screen like a laptop. This is fine because I have a bigger screen to work with. I will tend to leave mine open. So something important that you may want to do before you even start working on any projects in this class is setting up your website in order to allow your files to properly categorize. When you don't have a site set up, you can select your desktop, your local disk, certain drives that you might have got. You can set those independently, but the problem with that is when you go to transfer your files online for assignments and go live with a website, publish those HTML pages, you can run into issues when Dreamweaver and perhaps your web host can't communicate clearly with one another. So the very first thing before you even get started on an assignment is to produce a new site or manage current sites. So you would go to new site, you would want to give it a name. I'll call it, my site name is going to be for this class, so I'll name it the class, or you can call it web design, my projects, whatever you like. And you're going to source a local site folder. Now by default, it's telling me, okay, I'm going to put a file on my C drive in this case. I don't want it there. I want it someplace I can find it easily. So I'm actually going to go to my desktop and I've created a new folder. You could make a new folder at your own, but I went ahead and just made one ahead of time. So I'm going to select the folder and it's going to tell you here, okay, this is exactly where that folder is located. So I'll click save and it will tell me the root folder you've chosen is the same folder as my site. This may cause problems. This is just because I used that folder previously, so I'm just going to say okay. So what this does, why this is so helpful, is it's only going to show me files that pertain to what you're working on for the class. It's not going to show me anything else. I'm not going to see papers for English in this list. This is going to keep me as organized as humanly possible. So this is very, very important. But there's a couple other areas that I'd like you to do while we're in here as well. So I'm going to come back to site and I'm going to manage this site. I'm going to double click it. Under advanced settings, you need to set a default images folder. I recommend grouping all of your content into separate individual folders to keep you as organized as possible. So all of your graphic images like JPEGs and PNG files and GIF files, anything that you might use would by default, Dreamweaver will put it in this folder. So I'm going to go ahead and create that. It automatically opens up. I clicked on this little folder here. It opens up the folder that I produced to make my web pages in, and I'm going to make a new folder. I'm going to call it images. So it's going to use the images folder as the location where all images are going to be located. Okay. I'll click Save, and I'll click OK. I'm also going to click on Servers, and I'm going to click this plus sign. So for this course, you are going to need to set up a hosting site specifically to host your projects for this class. There are lots of different free hosting sites that are out there. I like to use Freehostia. Freehostia has lots of free hosting options, and it should be plenty for what you happen to need for this course. The only thing that you would need to do as far as purchase cost is you would need to purchase a domain name. It only costs you $10 a year to own a domain, so it could be your name. It could be johnsmithschoolwebsite.com. It doesn't have to be something fun or crazy, but keep in mind, if you're wanting to do web design potentially as a career choice and you have a concept for a name right now, now's a good time to jump on that. $10 a year is a very small investment. That's less than $1 a month. The hosting itself would be free. There are a lot of other free hosting websites out there. Some are better than others. I do recommend doing your research. I've heard that some students have a lot of problems with 000 web host. So I've also heard questionable things about Weebly. So do your research, maybe talk to your classmates. You may have had free hosting to use in a different class. If you took CTS 1851, which is a prereq for this course, you probably had free hosting through that as well. Some hosts ask you to have a domain name. Others will assign you one. That is totally a personal preference. I don't care one way or another, as long as you can upload your website to a hosting service and send me a link and have your website functioning. So I happen to have hosting through Freehostia, so I'll just tell you briefly how to set this particular panel up as though you were using Freehostia. Server name, this is just so you know the difference if you're using multiple ones or working with clients. So I'm just going to call it freehostia.com. FTP address, this is going to be something that your host provides to you. So I know that Freehostia's is ftp.freehostia.com. Port 21 is a default. So your username would be whatever you've set up through them when you subscribed. Password would be whatever password you set up. Click Test. It's going to chew on that and decide whether or not it works. If there's a problem, it may tell you that there's an FTP error, and it will tell you what the problem is. So my login and password is incorrect. So I will try a different password. Test again. Typically, when you type in the right password, it will connect immediately. So assuming you've got a decent internet connection, you will know right away whether or not you connect. If it sits there and thinks and you start to see like a load bar, usually that means there's something off, whether it's your password's incorrect or maybe some of the information you added isn't right. So I'll click OK. You will need to define your root directory. You will want to do that through your host, whatever host you happen to be. So there may be certain hosts have different folders preset, and there may be a public folder, so your root directory may be your public folder. And then you'll have your web URL. So this is going to be whatever domain name you purchased. So there's my domain name, so that would be the web URL that I would want to use to set this up. Again, this would be whatever URL you use. If you use a host that provides you with a domain name, such as johnsmith123 at webhost.com, that would be the web URL that you're going to be using here. I wouldn't mess with any of this other stuff. Really, these forms, these particular areas are going to be all that you'd need to work with. Root directory depends on the host, but it would be whatever public folder you have. You would hit save and go on. But that's basically all you need in order to set that up. That would save here, but I canceled out of it. So I'll click save. And done. It's very easy. If you need assistance, let me know. 9 times out of 10, any problems that occur are simply user error, plugging in the wrong password, or that sort of thing. So a couple terms worth being aware of before we get started on creating a new document is root folder. This is going to come up in the textbook. You're going to hear me refer to it during lectures. The root folder refers to the master folder that's going to be on your hard drive. We set that up. I created that. It's sitting on my desktop right here. When I set my site up, that was the folder, the root folder specifically for my site. So everything that you would potentially use on your web page, sound files, images, documents, PDFs, whatever you might use is going to be located here or within additional folders inside of that root folder. When I refer to the local site, whenever you make a website and then you upload it to a host, you're essentially making a copy of that content, one on your hard drive of your computer at home and one online on your host. So local site refers to content on the computer that you're working on. So when you make a page on your own computer using a program like Dreamweaver and then upload it to the internet where it can be used everywhere, when it's on your computer, it's referring to the local file. When you update or add a file and you move it from your local computer to your host, it's making basically a mirror image of what's on your local files or your local site. So when you remote, it's referred to the remote site once it's on the host, copied from your computer. So the folder on your computer is going to have the same structure. The folder on the host, your remote site, should have the same structure as everything that you have locally. So when you hear me talk about remote files or local files, that's going to be what that refers to. So we've created a new document. Again, if you want to do that, file new, pick HTML to get started. I picked none, no framework. Bootstrap is an option. We might get into that later, but for right now, we're doing very, very basic information. So select none. You do have the ability to add a title ahead of time if you'd like to. So for any home pages, any document that you want to be the first file that shows up whenever you open your website in a browser, it needs to be called index.html. So I'm calling it index. It's already an HTML file, so you don't have to add .html to the end of this. Leave the doc type alone. At this point, we don't have any style sheets, so I'm not going to worry about attaching one, but we will cover that later. And I will click Create. So by default, I'm going to be working with a blank document to get started. And I'm going to just write a quick introductory information. Perhaps I want the web page to have a header and text. And we'll pick a topic shortly. You can see that as I hit return and type, you can see the HTML update. Every time I hit return, it thinks I'm making a new paragraph. So it puts the P tag around whatever that line of text happens to be. And the P represents paragraphs. If I need to save this, and I will be editing this continuously, saving your file. File, I'll start with Save As. Again, I want this to be my index page. I did name it index, and that titled the page here in the HTML. So when I open it in a browser, that title is going to refer to what shows up in the Open tab. But I still need to name that document. Again, it is an index.html. For every home page, there's no exception. So index, and again, it's saving as an HTML type. So I'm going to click Save. You'll notice that in my local file, now I have that HTML document saved here, index.html. Now, if I need to add additional folders, for instance, let's say I eventually want to make a style sheet to design this page, make it look attractive. You can make additional folders within your root folder. I clicked refresh because it was graying it out, but I can make a new folder. It will make it right there. I'll call it CSS. I can edit or select multiple items within this as well. And I'll discuss what some of these are later on, but the only available way to do that would be to right click or to come up to this little triple line here and go to File and select New Folder. If I were to take my index.html document that I've produced and attempt to relocate it inside of a different folder that it's currently in, you're going to notice I'm going to have an Update Files window that opens. It's easy to assume that moving files and folders would be the same as just doing so on a desktop computer. But if you think a minute, if you've ever visited a web page and you've seen some sort of error, it might have been a 404 file not found error. This is essentially a broken link message. What that means is the host looked on its website to find a specific file at that location and could not find it. So what this means, update links in the following files. What Dreamweaver does is it's actually trying to catch you from making this potential issue that could cause problems on your website. So what this means is if it's changing the root of that file, it's no longer /index.html, it's now inside of the images folder, which is surrounded by the /. It will update everything else in your website to accommodate that. So if I had a picture or a URL linking to another location on my web page or to another site entirely, this is going to make sure that not only the location of this file changes, but all the other parts that link to it within your website recognize that there's that change being made. So you will always want to say update. Now, I don't want that in my images file. I'm going to bring it back to my root folder, but I'll click update again. It's an important thing to get in the habit of. Don't ever click do not update because it can potentially cause issues later on. If you realize, shoot, I want to name this something else, select that folder and then click one more time in the text portion and it will allow for you to alter whatever the name is, and then just hit return or enter to set it. Renaming files and folders can cause the same sort of issues as dragging files into folders and such. So if you rename something, it's going to give you the same option to update anything associated with it. Because I don't have any images in here yet, it's not giving me that box. But if I had a picture, let's find a picture real quick. I will insert an image. It's a picture of bacon. If I go to my images, click refresh, you'll notice that in my images is my bacon. In fact, I'm going to go to live view because it does dance. My dancing bacon is in my images folder. So to give you a visual, if I were to rename this dancing bacon, it will want to update that file. It says, okay, the name of this file has changed. It was named 3VP blah, 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 but now I've changed it to dancing bacon. So it's asking me, do I want to change that to make sure that the link isn't broken? If I click don't update, that's the issue that pops up. So I'm going to always click update to ensure that that link doesn't get broken. If you run into this problem, again, not a big deal. I can resource that. I'll click on that. You'll notice down here in the properties panel, now it says image, and it's showing me it's a broken picture right now. I'm going to grab this funny little shape right here. It looks like crosshairs for like a target, and it tells me I can point to the file. I'm actually going to click and drag. You can see how this line is attached. I'm just going to drag it to my renamed image, and that fixes it. You can also type in case sensitive, whatever you renamed it. You can type it in up here in the code. You can fix it several different ways, but in the end, you get the same end result. You can also select here and source it from the images file. If you need to delete a file or a folder, you've decided something is no longer relevant, you want to get rid of it, you can select it, which highlights it in blue, and hit the delete key on your keyboard. It will ask, do you really want to delete this? If you say yes, it gets rid of it. Might take a second to update. You can see that I am getting the broken link again, but that's because I deleted the file. If I wanted to also get rid of this icon, I have to physically delete the code as well. So deleting the file doesn't get rid of the box that it was taking up. I would need to delete both. And it will update. That's our brief introduction on the very basics of the interface. The next discussion, which is going to correlate with the reading, is going to cover editing text in Dreamweaver.